Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Mindful Muslim Podcast, the aim to empower people to live better lives. I'm your host, Aisha Aslam, and today we're tackling a challenge that many of us face: how to juggle responsibilities towards our elder parents, children, and work. We're going to be looking at this from both a psychological and Islamic perspective to find balance and meaning in our roles. So joining us today is Kamran, who's also known as Dr. Deen. I've seen him in action and he's well known in the community, doing amazing work with parents and the youth. So let me tell you a little bit about his background. He's a PhD researcher in sociology, lecturer, and founder of Dr. Deen Youth Solutions, a faith-based charity supporting Muslim youth and families for over 17 years. He's also affiliated with the Muslim Council of Britain. Dr. Deen has designed courses, conducted research to address challenges faced by Muslim youth. As a youth expert, grassroots worker, parenting coach, storyteller, and motivational speaker, he brings real-world solutions to the issues young Muslims encounter. His impactful talks and workshops have reached thousands, earning him roles as an advisor to educators, community leaders, and frequent appearances on TV, podcasts, and radio. Assalamu alaikum.
I'm Salman Abdullah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. How are you doing?
Good. Alhamdulillah. Great.
Really, really pleased to have you here today.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Deen, we've done podcasts on juggling parenting, work, and children, but today what I really wanted to focus on is a topic I don't think many of us really speak about, and I wanted to look at how to juggle parenting in the terms of caring for our elder parents and children, and also life demands and work and many issues that many of us can face and struggle with. So what do you think some of the challenges are for caring for aging parents? Is it just a matter of managing time towards our parents, children, and work? But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one thing we need to recognize is our identity as British Muslims, that we're British in many ways. It's not just fish and chips. It's actually our mindset as well, cultural values. So a lot of
I
what
do
we
love fish and chips.
a lot of what's happening in our community is a national. It's part of a national identity now, or Muslim identity, where we are following many of the trends. Like, for example, a lot of Muslims now live on their own, which wasn't a trend before. A lot of Muslims are now, like, which is a good sign, marrying women with children, which was rare before. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
all these trends that we're actually adopting from British life, and it's become the norm, right? So one of those is also parents and how we perceive our parents now. It's a lot of what I'm seeing is, and that, like as you mentioned, there's a growing number of Muslim parents being put into care homes. And
yes,
it used to be, when I worked in the care space, it was just not. It was very rare to find a Muslim parent in the care home, but
yeah,
now it's quite common.
yeah,
Now that is there's a balance that I think we've lost, and that's between career, you know, the bills, the mortgage, the children, lifestyle, holidays, and what we've done, and I see a lot of, is we've lost that the essence of what a parent is, like what it means to be lucky to have a parent that's alive. Because I've never had my grandparents, I never saw any of my grandparents, so I
okay.
don't know what it's like to have a grandparent. And I'll just give you one really quick example which really summarizes it. I had, about 20 years ago, a friend of mine whose father passed away all of a sudden,
Yeah,
unexpectedly. And I was at the funeral, and I said, "How are you feeling?" And he said, "I'm okay." And I said, "What do you mean by you're okay?" He said, I can't remember a single time in my dad's life, and he was still young. I can't remember a single time in my dad's life where I refused to obey him or do what he wanted or needed from me or expected from me. And that I've never forgotten that sentence. That till this day I remember that sentence. Another one I
mashallah.
always hear is people who lost a parent, lost a mother or father or both. They say it's a pain that you will never experience till you know it. It's like when you
Yeah,
have a child, that love you have for
yes,
your child, you can't measure that love. It's the same thing, and it's somebody said it's a pain like no other. only know it when it's too late. So how many of us are lucky enough to serve our parents? How many are going to be blessed enough? And I see it when me or my brother take my dad to the Jummah, to the mosque. Every elder will say, "May Allah bless you. You're so lucky. You don't know how lucky you are." And I was in Holland and Barrett the other day with my dad. I took him on a wheelchair, and there was I could tell it was a Hindu lady at the counter working in Holland and Barrett, and she was like shocked, like, "You're taking your dad in a wheelchair?" Because you don't see that anymore. You don't see many people take their parents out anymore. Whichever culture, religion, you just
Yeah.
don't see it. So she was shocked. I'm not saying it's anything amazing or anything, but she was shocked. Like, she couldn't get her head around it. Like, you took your dad out to, and then going around Holland Barrett and he's just picking whatever he wants. Even though he's got tons of almonds and cashew nuts at home, he's still buying more. But it's just to make him happy. It's not. We know we've got tons of food at home, but he just wants to go in the shop and pick things that he doesn't even need. But it's just that pleasing him.
And I think it's that word that you use, keep him happy.
Yeah. So the misconceptions, even culturally, are there's some parents who put pressure on their children to serve them when they're like 30, 40, 50. Like, you need to look after me and obey me. And they're very clingy. And some of them don't even allow them to leave the house. And then there's that one extreme, and the other extreme is where you completely just leave them, right? And just live your life, right? So we've got these two, and then you've got the joint family sort of system thing still happens a lot, where you're not allowed to leave your parents no matter what, even if there's other siblings that can look after your parents, and that can cause also issues for the children. And then I think it's really up to you to decide, do you want to be one of the lucky people to serve your parents? Because that fight that I've seen is like, no, you need to take dad to the doctors, you need to take dad shopping, you need to take mum here, you need to pay for her bills. It's like arguing not to earn the reward.
Absolutely.
Rather than just I'll do it because for Allah's sake.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I've seen those that do it, those that do look after their parents, 100% they get the blessing every second, every day. Sometimes through their children, sometimes through life, things that happen and the du'as they give you. But the 100% is confirmed by our Deen, by the elders, by even wise people will tell you that if you serve your parents, you're going to be very lucky in life and very blessed. And I think people have forgotten that message.
Absolutely. And I think what you're talking about, Dr. Deen, is the mindset. And if we're having that positive mindset, if we're thinking about it, not just from an Islamic perspective, but just knowing that by serving your parents, by being there for your parents, there's so much reward.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm currently, my dad's starting to get quite elderly. He needs a lot more support. There's health issues. And even when I go and see my dad and I'm spending time with him, there's this feeling of barakah. I can't explain it, but there's this really strong, positive, calm, sukoon feeling when I'm with him. But what you did mention, I think, can come up quite often is siblings. And siblings can have different ideas. You may not all have the same perspective. And like you said, one might think, actually, we don't need to do anything at all. And others like, we have to be with him every single second of the day. And then, so it's, how do you manage that? How do you manage the different perspectives within the family?
I think siblings have to either have an amicable way of working, like a WhatsApp group. Like, we've got a WhatsApp group for Abu, right? Because my mum is, mashallah, mobile active. For my dad, we've got a WhatsApp group that says, okay, he's got an appointment, he's got the opticians, he wants to buy something, wants to go out, and who can do it? And then amongst us, we'll just message each other.
Yeah.
Now, I'm blessed to live with my dad, so I do a lot of it because I'm here. But then others do help as well. Now, that has to remain positive in how you communicate. It's not like it's a burden. You do it, or you're doing too much, I'm not doing enough. What I see it like this is like, it's your blessing if you do it. It's your loss if you don't. Rather than arguing about it. It's like, do you want to be the lucky one? Do you want to fight for this or not? Rather than like avoiding it. Now, where does it become an issue is when this is the Islamic perspective and the cultural perspective of do daughters need to do anything? Because I see two types of um, settings in this sort of scenario where you've got parents, elderly parents. And I'm talking about elderly when they need you, actually, like they emotionally, physically need you or financially need you, not when they're actually active and working. That's a different matter. But when they actually need you, when the Quran says when they're elderly and, you need to be there for them, you see either you see those that are like, look at it like, I'm going to do my job as a daughter, but only as an additional service. But it is only the sons that have to do it. Like it's all on them.
Yeah.
And then you've got other families where everyone's doing it equally. Even
Yeah.
if they're married, they're just saying, you know what, I'll do just as much as my brother.
It
And I
doesn't
find
matter.
this really interesting because which one is right, And there's difference of opinion on this as well. But I personally, my experience of this is if you've got time as sisters, the daughters of your father and your mother, if you've got time for other things like going to the mall, shopping center, and every other activity, then I'm sure you can make the time for your parents. So I in today's world, I don't think it holds as much as maybe or if you're living in another city or anything like that. So that's a really interesting dynamic where it's either culturally or Islamically, it's only the sons have to do everything for their parents, whether it's
Yeah.
financially, yes, but other things, should be discussed as siblings and say, what's the way we should do this?
Yeah, and I think this also connects to generational differences. So,
Yeah.
previous generations, there was a very fixed mindset that boys are the only ones that do the
Mm.
care for their
Yeah.
parents, and the daughters keep a step back. They have
Yeah.
to be with their husbands, they have to deal with their in laws,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
their role. However, as generations are changing, and like you said, we're having more of a British culture as
Yeah.
well, and other cultures
Yeah.
that we entwine within our identity, that our generations are changing. There is a shift in mindset that actually both genders can do it. It doesn't have to be just the males and in
Yeah.
the family. It can
Especially when
also
we're
be
doing
females.
Yeah, especially when we're doing everything in that way. We're working almost equally.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
Everything else.
women are doing the same.
It's like once somebody said once that women shouldn't go to the masjid, right?
Yes,
But they can go to the mall and then go everywhere else, but they shouldn't go to the masjid. So,
absolutely.
so it doesn't make sense. If they can go everywhere else, why can't they go to the house of Allah?
Absolutely. And I know
Yeah,
I've come from a background where I was brought up, your duties to serve your parents, your
yeah,
duties to look after them when they're older. But I know future generations, there is that perspective, but there's also alternative options as well. The
yeah,
idea of care homes, the
yeah,
idea of other scenarios that we will touch on a little later
yeah,
on. But Dr. Deen, I wanted to ask you about, what about scenarios where children may not be near their parents? So,
yeah,
alhamdulillah, you have a blessing where you are
yeah,
able to be with your father. But
yeah,
there are scenarios and situations where some children are abroad, they don't
yeah,
live with their parents. There's a huge distance where they
yeah,
are, and they're not able to see them. Well, practicalities as well. The house is not
yeah,
big enough. They
yeah.
have children. Their spouses may not be on board. So I'm just, maybe that's too many
Yeah,
all at
no,
once.
no, no, that's actually
But
fine. So
this is real life. This is what
there's 2
happens.
points. One is about what the current generation is doing, and then we can talk about the distance thing. So I'll do the distant one first.
Yes.
For me myself, I'm here now for my dad. I wouldn't actually even be in the UK if it wasn't for my dad. So I
Okay.
have options to live abroad, but I'm only here for my dad. So I chose that, and even though I have got siblings who can do it, I want to be lucky enough to do that and have that and that reward. So, but
Alhamdulillah.
with the sisters, it's different because the husbands might be somewhere else. You're with in-laws, it's not the same, and we can't compare the two. I have that freedom to do that. When it comes to that distance, I think it's about how badly you want it. Allah makes it easy for you. So I've got a friend actually who's got an elderly grandfather. Actually, hasn't got a father, but got a grandfather's elderly. Had a fall at home, and he lives 400 miles away, and he's always worried about his grandfather. So he's ringing him, checking up on him, and all his healthcare appointments, everything. And what happened? His intention was to serve his grandfather, and he lost his job, and Allah freed him up, and now he lives with his grandfather. So he's moved 400 miles. But his intention was to serve him, and Allah made it easy for him. Allah made a way, and it happened. So if your intention is there to serve your parents, Allah will make a way for you. Allah will make it easy for you to do it, even if it's once a month, once every 3 months, once a week.
Yeah.
But what matters is that you actually do can. And the example from the same family is that the daughter-in-law would send parcels of food in the post for grandfather, which
Okay.
because she couldn't be there,
Mashallah.
400 miles away, but still showing I'll do whatever I can. Or
Yeah.
things you can do on the phone. You can do the appointments. You can book. Like my dad likes going to the masjid for certain events at the mosque, or going to certain cultural or community events. So we book it in for him and take him to those things. So
Yeah.
and you could plan your trip to the city where your parents live
Mm.
around that time when there's that event. I think it's about intention and intent, and then you works around that. In terms
Mm.
of the new generation, this envision it like this. Unfortunately, a lot of it is like this. One is a lot of even our generation or a bit younger are now using grandparents as babysitters. Their only purpose, or parents, sorry, not even grandparents for the children, but the parents. Nowadays, a lot of parents are being used as just a drop-off point uh, while we go on holiday or while we're working.
Yes.
And there's no other reason for it. It's literally you are a free babysitter. I've seen mothers who go on trains to where their children live, like
Yeah.
2 hours away in the other end of London, because they're going to work and they sit there all day with the grandchild. They may have
Mm-hmm.
that connection, they may not. Naturally, they'll love their grandchild, but they didn't ask to be the babysitter,
Mm.
long hours until, and when they get back from work, they say, "Oh, you can go now."
Mm.
And this is like people who are, you know, meant to be on the Deen, and this is what they're doing. Or, we're going on holiday alone, 2 weeks, look after them.
Mm.
But building that bond is not just about dropping them off.
I think
Uh,
it connects back to intention, doesn't it? Really,
yeah,
what is their
yeah,
intention, as
yeah,
opposed to what the bond is, and sort of
yeah.
building
And another,
relationships.
absolutely, another one I say is quite sad is that some kids, it's about that generational change, one extreme to the other. We went from obeying our parents even if it was haram. So I
Mm.
remember a kid when I
Yes.
was at college, his dad had an off license to selling alcohol, and his dad forced him to work there. You must obey your parents.
Yes.
So you've got that one extreme. Now it's the other extreme where the kids are more in control, or where
Yes.
they are going to be like, oh, you know what? I'll come and see you once a year. I'll drop flowers off and a card that I love you.
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
might be the only amount of contact they have with their parents. So yeah,
Absolutely. And I think it's also the priorities. What is the priority? Because this comes up quite often. What is the priority? Is it my parents who are elderly? Is that my priority? Or is it my children, my spouse?
yeah,
How do you sort of balance that?
yeah.
For some they can, and for some they just can't, because it's so
Honestly,
difficult.
I think we're lacking spirituality in this world now. I really
Mm.
believe, and I'll tell you how I know that from my own experience. Whenever you're trying to balance let's see, your wife, your kids, your parents, your family, relatives, other things, community commitments, Allah times it so perfectly. Allah
Mm.
makes it work. I mean, I'm that hadith which says that Allah becomes the eyes with which you see, your
Yeah.
feet with which you walk, and your arms with which you use.
Yeah.
That is so true. When you become, that's my favorite hadith actually. That when you get close to Allah, Allah opens doors. And he manages your life for you. And I'll
Mm.
give you a simple, practical example of that. I had to drop my son off to the train station, and I'm working remotely. And my mum also needed me, and I dropped my son to the station, and literally my mum calls me at the same time, and she's in the same area at my aunt's house. And I'm like, Yalla, you made that happen, because an hour later I wouldn't be able to pick her up for 3 hours. There's a work meetings. And it's like the timing of how Allah makes it happen.
Yeah.
You need a bit of faith that if you really want to do something, it's like with anything in life you want to achieve, anything, a business or a goal of the great work you're doing, or community work, or psychology or counseling, whatever you want to achieve in life, Allah will open the doors. And
Mm.
we forget that. We forget that what we live in a world of social media where you've got all these billionaires, millionaires, all this stuff. They attribute everything to themselves when it was only Allah. Nobody is great. No one achieves anything except for with Allah's help.
Mm.
Allah put the person in the right place at the right time. He met the right person to get that contract, was born to the right parents, born in the right city, was at the right place for those things to happen. Yet everybody's in social media. I'm amazing. I'm fit. I'm strong. I'm rich. And it's all me. And the new ego is me. The new God is me. This idea that I'm doing things. And literally, yes, you have to put the work in. The hard work comes from us. But without Allah, nobody, no billionaire would be a billionaire. Nobody would be anywhere without Allah's help. And we've forgotten that. And the same with good deeds. Nobody does good deeds without Allah's permission. But we just have to try and then see how easy it becomes.
Yeah.
If you really want to serve your parents, watch how easy it becomes. It'll be Allah will make it easy.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're saying. It's looking beneath the surface. There's another layer behind circumstances. They don't just happen out of thin air. There's a reason behind it. And that's making me connect with my own personal experiences with my community and with my family as well, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just brings you together. When you feel it's impossible, it becomes possible. And lots of things happen, lots of people come as a blessing. So I think absolutely, and I think about cases as well where people are struggling and how can they manage that, and it comes back down to these practicality things. But one thing that does come up quite often, Dr. Deen, is, am I doing enough? And this is a question I hear so often, and this feeling of guilt really kicks in for so many people.
I mean, it's good to have that guilt. It's good to have that nafs that's being awakened and say, you know what, am I doing enough? If you don't have that, then your soul is dead, isn't it? So you really need to have that guilt. And if you've got the guilt, you're already a good person or a good Muslim. So having the guilt that you're not doing enough for your parents is great. The next step is, what can you do bite-sized, right? Don't think you're going to do everything overnight, but what's a small thing you're not doing for your parents that you can do now that you're not doing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, just yesterday, my dad needed eardrops. Put the eardrops in, and I thought, what if something happens to my dad? And I just kissed him. I just thought, because I might miss it if I don't do it now. Even though sometimes hard, he's got eardrops, he's got cotton wool in his ear, but I just thought I'd just do it anyway. And so you don't want to miss any moment that won't come back.
Yeah.
So I think if you have that perspective of like, you're feeling guilty, but you feel now I feel bad, but that's not good enough, because you can feel bad about doing anything haram or bad, but the action is needed after that. Or if you feel bad, you eat junk food, or you lied, or you backbite, then you've got to do something. Stop the backbiting, stop eating the junk food. Same with this. If you feel you're not doing enough for your parents, then you need to place yourself in a position where you can reschedule your life, work out. Like I said, even if you're doing 0 right now because you're very far away, then do once a month. Once a month is better than 0, definitely. So it's just about planning around and seeing it just as important as, like you said, like raising your kids. You know.
And I think with guilt, like you said, I think it's a good emotion. It's natural. It's normal to feel that, and it does show that you care. But I think, again, there's this balance, isn't there? There's this balance of, it can become too extreme where you become dysfunctional. Or it can become healthy where it's functional, and it can really get you to start doing things and motivate yourself. But I think it's also, like you said, every person's circumstances are different, and having to take that on board. So what one person does in one family might be very different for another person, and you've got to take that into consideration. So like you said, if somebody is abroad and they just physically can't be there for their parents, there are alternative things they can do. Like you said, they can call them, they can do support by posting things to them. There's other ways that they can show their love, their care, their responsibility as a child towards their parents.
So there's 2 concepts that you mentioned that are really interesting. One is regret. So a lot of social media messaging can be really great and really helpful. I think social media, we knock it, but it can be amazing as well.
Absolutely.
It can really be incredible. So, but some of the messaging out there that is completely destructive or wrong, things like no regrets. We live on regrets, that I sinned, I shouldn't have done that. So these ideas like no regrets, it's freeing you from responsibility, like no regrets at all. Another one is I deserve something. Now, we don't deserve anything. We just Allah's given us. So this concept, I deserve something, can keep you away from your parents or from anything that you want to do in life. Because if you think I deserve a better life, and that means I don't have to drive down to see my dad and look after him or spend time with him, so I deserve my day off, right? Then you're saying that you have set your own reward in life, your own expectations. It's not Allah then. You're saying, for example, if I said, I deserve an amazing car. So I'm saying this is what Allah should give me. And I know what Allah should give me. So this concept, a lot of Muslims have it now of the I deserve. You don't deserve anything. I don't deserve anything. We're just grateful for what we've got and we work for things, but we don't set a checklist for Allah. This is what I deserve. Is then we're deciding our own fate and destiny by saying, I deserve these things. You don't. No one deserves anything. Because when you start deserving, you expect things.
Yes.
And when you expect, you're never going to get happy. Because
you can already see that road, can't you? How it's going to become destructive. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think what you said, gratitude is such a key aspect, is being grateful, thinking about just what you have, the opportunities, the blessings that you can gain. And if you're not physically present, there's so many things you can do.
Yeah.
And alternative support. So that's another thing. If you can't do that, you can get somebody else to do that and put that in place, arrange that. So at least that way you're still doing what you can as best as you can.
Yeah, even praying for your parents like they pray for us is such a powerful thing, to happen. And I think one of the areas that we need to look at is the elderly. Our parents don't have anywhere to hang out. Most mosques, as you know, are locked off from the youth and elderly. But if they can go somewhere and meet other elders, that would be amazing. And I know
there are a few, but not as
many. And if we can do that in every mosque, or a lot of mosques, or most mosques, have something for the elderly to go and hang out, have a cup of tea together. I think for the mental health, it's amazing. For this,
connection.
Because when you're old and retired, your whole day planning could be just that 1 hour session of something. Today I'm doing this, and just they look forward to it. Like my dad looked forward to all his appointments on his calendar on the wall. He looks forward to all of them. To us, it means nothing. It's a massive deal for him. So if we can respect what's big for them, that would be amazing. So if what's small for us, like having lunch with friends, but for them it's very rare. It's a big occasion for our parents to go out, take them out for a meal or something like that. So we need to look at it.
I completely agree with you. I think that is really important. But there may be elderly parents that may not want to go out and they'd rather be at home. And I would also suggest you look at what are their interests. So they may like gardening. They may like to do something else. And it's about looking at what is their interests and encouraging them and sharing that with them or bringing that into their life so that, like you said, they have something to look forward to. I think it's so important.
Yeah, I think also not to write off parents when they're, let's say, unfortunately, life expectancy is now 74 and 76. So we're living shorter lives because of ultra-processed foods, the junk, the poison we're putting in our bodies. And the research is all funded by these industries that want us to be addicted. So the science is all messed up. So what I mean by that is people are not living as long as they should. And that means our parents as well. So we shouldn't write off our parents, say, oh, they're old now, let them sit on the sofa. But we should still be doing things with them or take them places and socialize with them or bring them to play. I always make an effort, even with my mum, to say, let's take dad everywhere we go. So why is he at home when we're going out? Let's say, and he does, you're right. A lot of parents are like so used to sitting on the sofa.
Yes.
They don't want to go. It's not that they don't want to go out. They're just now used to it or they've accepted it because you see, when you do take them out, their mood changes. So they just don't want to trouble anybody or get in the car. It's cold, it's uncomfortable. But once they're out, I've noticed with elder parents, they actually love it. So we might think they want to stay home all day long. But actually, we know the research on the elderly, even like UK stats on the depression levels of elderly who live on their own, and cause of dementia and Alzheimer's and all the rest. So it's not healthy for them at all. Why would we want our parents in that situation? So yeah, I think
And we're social creatures. So when we
yeah,
socialize, we feel better. That's how
uh,
we were
yeah,
created.
exactly. So making that happen, I think it's hard work. It's hard work serving your parents, looking after them. But then if you want Jannah, and if you want the rewards in this life and the blessings of their prayers, and you will
Yeah.
lead to your success in everything. So you
Now,
can,
now I'm going to challenge you, Dr.
yeah,
Deen, because there are so many different scenarios, and I want to
yeah,
hopefully, inshallah,
yeah.
help whoever's listening to this that it can, maybe they can connect or they can take something away. So I was thinking about, what about those who've not got on with their parents, who've had a bad and difficult
Yeah.
experience, and now they're in a situation where their parents need them, but they're so angry with them, or they've got a lot of resentment.
Okay, there's two cases I come across with this scenario where parents bitterness towards parents because of maltreatment or mistreatment.
Yes.
There's those that genuinely were abused, and those that
Yeah.
are like a victim mentality or
Mm,
want to believe they were abused. So you get some parents, young parents or children, who say, I was abused by my parents. But when
yeah.
you look at the case and the definition of it, it wasn't abuse. It's like victimhood is a currency nowadays. People want to be victims.
Mm,
It's really cool to say that, it's like having a label now is really something people value for some reason. It's
yeah.
like building resilience isn't important anymore. It's about being weak and being a victim and being, I can't do things. I
Mm.
can't get out of bed. I can't get a job.
Justification,
Yeah.
perhaps. Yeah.
Then there's those who genuinely were abused. So
Yeah.
we have to separate these two. So start with
Mm,
the one where I know many cases where people say, my mom was terrible to me. And I've seen parents that literally would constantly shout at them,
mm.
even like drag them, hit them. But it was part of the what we got the wrong or right, the 80s parenting, the
Yeah.
70s parenting, which happened, right?
That's the norm.
And there's
Yeah.
a much lower rate of mental health issues in that generation. I'm not saying this is correct. Of course, it's not correct. It's not Islamic.
Mm,
But somehow these tough times build tough people. I'm not saying com- that's not a holistic approach to this problem, but you can define abuse as you spoke loud to me. You can
yeah.
define abuse as someone beat me up. They
Yeah.
both can be called
Different
abuse,
meanings. Yeah.
different meanings. So really, those people first need to decide were they real victims of their parents' abuse, or is it something that you perceive it to be abuse?
Mm,
Um, so, and then you need to get someone else's opinion on that. You can't be your own judge on that. So if you feel like your parents abused you, they need to get some experts to talk through it.
mhm.
But the problem in today's world is and I see this on social media. Sometimes people on these podcasts will say, you know what, your life is perfect, your life is amazing, but you don't know you were a victim. Like creating a problem that doesn't exist. You're saying to someone, no, your childhood wasn't great, even though you're happy with your life. We're saying we need to think about and dig deeper into this. Why? I'm okay. Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. I'm thankful for my life. I've got everything I want. But no. Your life wasn't as great as you think it was. Why are we creating these kind of scenarios? So that's one. And then there's those that genuinely were abused.
Yeah.
For those that were abused, of course it's harder. It's almost impossible to face, let's say, a father who abandoned you, or a
Yeah.
mother who abandoned you, or was always abusive.
Yeah.
Again, it's all about doing things step by step. You know, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. It's just that one small thing you can start with. And I've seen those people that have done that, and
Mm,
it's worked out very positively. So I've seen people who had no relationship with a parent because of abuse
yeah.
of some sort, and they slowly, for Allah's sake, did it, or because they're a good person, they did it, and it has broken down the barriers. Because every human being has regret if they've done something wrong
Mm,
inside. They know what they've done, and we all sway from demonic to angelic at different parts and times
yeah.
of our lives. And so even somebody who a parent that has been evil may have remorse, they may
Mm,
not have remorse. But if you want to really it's like it's good for you. I say when you do something good or forgive someone, it's only benefiting you. Is it doesn't
Absolutely.
harm the other person either way. But if you forgive, you're going to free yourself of all that burden, and you're going to feel amazing that I'm actually the better person.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, I'm the better person. I'm going to go and see my mum who was extremely abusive, or my dad who left me, or my dad used to beat me up. I'm going to see my dad. Wow, I'm very lucky if I can do that. So it's very hard. There's no doubt about that. It's very difficult. But if you can even do a small bit towards that, I think at the end of the day, it's all about perspective. You want to be a good human, a good Muslim, and you believe in the afterlife, then make those steps, but do it in a way that you're comfortable, but don't be too comfortable. So if you, for example, if you've got a father who's 87 years old, he's on his deathbed, you don't have time to wait anymore, you know. But if
It's
your
an
father's like,
opportunity. Yeah.
yeah, if it's 75 and still active, you've got time, inshallah, and you can take that a bit slower. So it's all about, you don't want to be the person that regrets it
And I think
tomorrow.
a good question to think of, because it's just made me think about this, is a good question to think about is, once your parent has passed away, do you have any regrets?
Yeah, exactly.
Because
That's the first.
right now you have this opportunity.
Yeah,
And I think it's also about, what are you able to do? For some, they might be able to take that
yeah,
step and be able to forgive and to be with them. And for others, they may not be, because of the trauma
yeah,
or how
yeah,
difficult it's been. But they could be alternative things that they could do. And I think what you said, it's always having that higher motivation. And we
yeah,
see that in Islam, that even with our own enemy, we should
yeah,
be good with them. Even
exactly.
though if someone's bad to us, we should still be good
Yeah,
regardless. And by doing that, that can create a change. But ultimately, you're doing it for fi sabilillah,
yeah.
for the sake of Allah
And
subhanahu
if
wa
you
ta'ala.
can't see a parent in that situation, then send them a card or a
Yes.
text message and start there
Yeah.
and
But
see how it goes.
I think it's the intention, and it's
Yeah,
the reminding yourself, this is the reason why I'm doing it,
yeah,
rather than
yeah,
reminding yourself of the difficult memories, or the sort of the trauma that they may have gone through.
yeah,
And like you said, I think sometimes it can be victim mentality. It could be a justification
yeah,
to justify their actions as to why they're
yeah,
not doing it.
yeah,
But again, I think that question could be helpful. Once they've gone, are you going to be okay
yeah,
with the
absolutely.
choices you've chosen? I think that would be a good way to enable a person to be comfortable with their choices.
Yeah,
And there is no right or wrong. It's really your decision, and it's
yeah,
between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
yeah,
at the end of the
absolutely.
day. Just very quickly, I just wanted one more dilemma, and then we'll go into
Yes,
some other sort of
yeah,
perspectives. But if you're not able to live with your parents, it's practicality, there's not enough room.
yeah,
Your spouse doesn't agree,
mm,
or whatever it might be, you
yeah,
don't
yeah,
have the
yeah,
support. What can you do? Because this also kicks in guilt for a lot
yeah.
of people.
Yeah, I mean, we have this, cost of living crisis, housing crisis.
Yes.
Allah knows this. It's not about, your circumstances are not something you're going to be accountable for.
Yeah.
But what you are accountable for is what you try to do about it, as
Okay.
much as you can. So nobody should feel guilty because they can't control something. They should only feel guilty if there's something they can do and they don't do it. So when it comes to things like you can't live with them, there's no space, or they're far away. Um, Again, all you can do is make a plan, and discuss it with your spouse or your siblings, that I'm thinking that this is what we should do, so that I can also see my parents or spend time with them, and involve the grandchildren as well, because that's another thing, isn't it? The grandchildren, some are really close, but a lot of them are not nowadays. They just
So,
see them as some old people. Some crazy about their grandparents. Some are not being brought close to grandparents, and sometimes it's actually the parents themselves who are doing that,
absolutely.
which is another interesting dilemma, isn't it? Where unfortunately sometimes there's a lot of sisters who have children who are very close to the mum side of the family, but not as close to the dad side of the family. And the great women are those who create a balance in both sides. I've seen some amazing women who make sure the kids love dad side of the family and mum side of the family equally, more or
Yeah.
less, and it's amazing. And they benefit from a whole load of cousins on both sides, grandparents, and then there's those women who only veer the children towards their side of the family, and I've even seen extremes where they hate the dad side of the family. Why would you do that to your own children? I call that abuse, because why would you do that to your children, denying them a whole family that is their
Sure.
blood? So I'm not saying all women do that, but I've seen this a lot, a lot of scenarios like that.
It could be a lot more complex as well, but I completely
Yeah,
get your point,
yeah,
because it could
yeah,
be things happening with in-laws, with the
yeah,
partner,
yeah,
all of
absolutely.
these dynamics. But I do agree. I think children shouldn't be used as a weapon
Yeah,
between
there's
relationships.
a good point you raised, Aisha, about it could be abuse, and it could be in-laws are difficult, or there's been other issues between sisters. You're absolutely right. Even in that case, we still need to keep that bond.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I give an example. If you had a Hindu or a Sikh or a Christian neighbor, and they were hungry, you would give them food, right? But the same person wouldn't give to their mother-in-law or father-in-law. Why not?
Okay.
It wouldn't make any sense, right? So if you would be merciful to your neighbor, you'd also be merciful to them. And also, it's reciprocal as well. It's a two-way thing. It's not a one-way thing. Yeah,
And I think it's practicing them spiritual aspects in our lives, about being humble, about being
yeah,
grateful, about
yeah,
being forgiving, about being merciful, and
yeah,
again for a higher achievement, a higher purpose, as
yeah,
opposed to
yeah.
for doing it for a certain expectation. I think it's I'm doing this for the sake of for my next life.
All relationships are like that. No one said any relationship is easy, whether it's your blood, brothers and sisters, whether it's in-laws. No relationship, even friends, is easy. And I'm friends is different because you choose them, and you might hang out with only ones that you like, but you can't choose your family, and you can't choose your in-laws either.
And they're there for a reason, and then
Yeah,
trials come for a reason, and
yeah,
it's about again reminding yourself of the spiritual purpose behind
yeah,
it. It's not happened out of thin air, and that's something that we always need to reflect on. Take a step back. Why is this happening to me? There must be a deeper reason behind it. What am I trying to, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trying to get us to do in these circumstances? What is our trial? What is our test? I did want to think about care homes as well, because I know that's quite a big stigma in our
yeah,
community.
yeah.
So what are your thoughts about that?
I've worked in care homes for a few years. After my A levels, I worked in care homes. So I worked firsthand looking after the elderly in nursing homes, residential care homes. I was a manager as well. Care homes in our Western context are like waiting stations to die. I know there is a Care Quality Commission and all of these rules, but they're so hard to regulate the daily lives of these elderly people. Inspections once a year, maybe one random uninvited inspection, but other than that, you are just mainly in incontinence pad. You're sitting there. There's very little really care. The staff turnover is very high in these care homes, so people leaving all the time. So you can't even build a bond with a carer because they've gone. The next morning you wake up. In that scenario, it can't be the right place for any parent. Forget, let alone Muslim parent. Any human being's dignity. That's why you see even in Muslim cultures or Chinese cultures and other cultures where you keep your parents with you. Beneficial for the children. The outcomes for
Yeah.
children with grandparents significantly better in terms of well-being, mental health, success. Grandparents with children is a key to success. That's proven in the research. The other thing is, if we have parents in care homes, a lot of it, and I've seen this with my own, as there was a Muslim mother in a care home who was, they do this, basically they wash you down with a flannel, a strip
Okay.
wash.
Yeah, strip
She was
wash.
she was crying because they'd taken all her clothes off, and they were just really quickly just wiping it down with a soapy flannel. And imagine the dignity of your mother being stripped naked every morning, just washing it down like that and putting clothes on it, just leaving it there. Then it's left on a chair for hours and hours and hours. That's the life of a care home, if I'm honest. Or they might play a few activities if you're lucky, if they have the funding and all of the rest. It's not a great life. If we want to do that, if we have to do that, that's I'm not going to make a judgment on that, but you can
So
not.
that was
Yeah,
your insight when you
yeah,
were.
that's what I've seen
Mm.
firsthand. But you can always watch videos and reports on these things
Do,
and
you,
read government reports. And
do you think it's developed since then
no,
over the
it can't,
years?
because actually budgets have gone down since I worked in it. They're actually stretched even further now. The allowance per resident has gone down. It's gone up, but in terms of inflation and actual cost, it's gone in terms of value, it's gone down. There is no practical way of doing this. So if you have a care home and let's say you set one carer per 6 residents or 4 residents or 8 residents, they have to run around, and there's a routine. So there's breakfast, then there's cleaning the rooms, then there's tea time, then there's lunch. It's a non-stop cycle of work where
Yeah,
you can't give any emotional support. You're not really bonding
it's
with
not
them.
practical.
It's really is a routine. They have no other time other than to deliver the minimum of what's required. Now there was a lot of we used to have care plans in the care homes, so you'd write
Yes.
each person's care plan on a daily basis, and you'd really be copy pasting, because what else could you say? Unfortunately, a lot of it would be, oh, they're happy today, had a cup of tea, listen to some. They used to play war songs in those days. Listen to war songs, or oh yeah, we played cards, but they weren't really interacting. But you're just almost like ticking a box, which is not the same as being at home with them. Now, I can't say whether it's wrong or right for every individual, but what I've seen isn't great. And you can read the research and the studies on this. Independent studies on care homes and nursing homes. If you
Yeah.
read them, you'll get a good insight into what it's like.
So maybe it's seen as a very last resort, and if you can
Hopefully,
care for
yeah,
your parents, if you
yeah.
can, but if you can't, again, that is an option. And I do know that you can get carers coming to the house as well, so you could
That's a
also
better.
pay for carers to come and visit
Yeah.
your
So,
parents.
another area of research with elderly and their well-being is if they stay in the community,
Yes,
it's way better for them. So absolutely, if there's an option
familiar
between,
surroundings. Yeah.
yeah, so if there's an option between them staying in their own home, which they feel comfortable, which they can relate to, with which they've lived in probably 30, 40, 50 years,
Yes.
moving them to, I've seen elderly cry when they're told they have to go to a care home, because
Yeah.
it's not their home.
Yeah.
So if you can keep them in the community and with a carer coming, that's the best option if it's difficult to look after them. And as last resort, I won't even say that, because I don't believe in it from what I've seen. But that's a judgment to do istikhara on it before you do
Yeah.
it. Ask Allah, is this the right thing for my parents?
I've come across many different cases,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
sometimes it is needed, and that's also okay.
yeah.
It's another
Yeah,
option,
you can't
it's
make
another
yeah, you
alternative.
can't, yeah,
There are different experiences. Some have found it
yeah,
difficult and negative, and
yeah,
there's some who have found it
yeah,
quite positive. And again, I
yeah,
think it really depends. But it is an option. It is circumstantial, and it's
yeah,
about trying to do the best that you can. But if it could be seen as the last resort, that would be
yeah,
ideal, because research does show staying in your own environment, your surroundings,
yeah,
staying with the people you're familiar with, creates more positivity for elderly people. And that comes along with staying in their own house compared to maybe their child's house as well.
yeah. You're right.
That's
So there's no one size fits all. You're right. You can't make a judgment on someone that does make that decision. You can't, because we don't know the circumstances.
exactly.
That's not to say that. This is just my overview of what I've seen, but there
Of
must
course.
be good care homes as well, or genuinely. It all comes down to the management of the care home. Who owns it? Is it a profit-making entity? Are they there for the money? Are they non-profit? Who runs it? Do your research if you're going to ever go down that path.
Yeah,
Who owns this care home? Which organization owns it? What's their reviews like, and all of that stuff that you do.
absolutely. Okay, thank you. Because I think that's something that, again, everyone's circumstances are different. Some of these dilemmas, many of us will connect with, and
Yeah,
it's about
yeah,
seeing what can we do in these scenarios.
yeah.
But what would I know we've touched a little bit on Islam, but what does Islam say about how we care for our aging parents?
So in the Quran, when it's mentioned about don't say uff to your parents, I find that fascinating, that verse, because my dad calls me like 20 times a day, right? He's next door, but he'll call me. It'll be like be something very, might be small to me, but it's big to him. right?
Sure.
Or he might ask, he already knows about his appointment, he might ask to reconfirm it. Mashallah, he's fully like alert and aware of everything he's doing. But sometimes I'm like, bloody hell, again. And that's that oof in the Quran, actually. And then I shut up. Said, "What are you doing?" I don't say to anyone. I say to myself, like, "Bloody hell, again," because it's like 20 times a day or 30 times a day. But I always go, and I'm glad to go. But I'm saying it to myself.
Yeah, it's
It's the oof.
frustrating.
I'm doing the oof because like, or my dad's going out without a jacket on, and it's freezing, and he won't listen, and I'm like, flipping hell, yeah. Why are you doing this? But I'm doing the oof that the Quran says don't do, but I'm doing it. So Allah forgive me. But that's how you practically see the Quran in the real world when you start living as much as you can. It's like, oh my God, I'm doing what Allah says don't do. I'm doing oof with my parents, you know, when they're elderly, and it is specifically about when they're elderly. Obeying them, obviously, they need something, you do it, you help them. But again, it's finding that balance between your kids, your work. You might have a business, you might have community work to do, and if you can share, if you're another scenario is if you're the lone child, that's the difficult one, isn't it? When you're the only child, what do you do?
Yeah.
So some people have dedicated their lives to their parents. Allah reward them, but they've literally given up everything to look after their parents. I had a friend whose father was seriously ill, and he literally gave up his job and he would just sit with his dad. So he would work a little bit remotely, like whatever he could do, but he would literally sit in the same room as dad and just watch him and just get him whatever he wants. But that's incredible. He gave up, and Allah reward him, and inshallah his kids will be there for him. But you know, there are some amazing examples like that.
Absolutely. I think that is, mashallah, amazing. Alhamdulillah, may Allah reward him for making that choice. But that might not be the choice that many children can make.
Yes, exactly.
And I think it's really about what we talked about earlier is balancing them roles, knowing that you can only do the best that you can. And I just wanted to bring something else in. I think Islam also teaches about the importance of honoring our parents and caring for our families and fulfilling our responsibilities in all roles that we have. So it's not about, okay, we have to give up this and then we only do this. I think if some can, alhamdulillah, but if you can't, that's also allowed in Islam. And I just wanted to share an ayah in the Quran. It says, we've enjoyed upon man to his parents good treatment. His mother carried him with hardship and gave birth to him with hardship. This verse reminds you about the immense value of the parents, about taking care of them as a way of honoring the sacrifices that they made for us. But equally, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also emphasized about being kind to our children. So sometimes you might have your aging parents on one side and you have your children on the other. And he says, be merciful to those on the earth, and the one in the heavens will have mercy upon you.
Absolutely.
So these teachings guide us about being compassionate in our roles, without feeling that one role is in competition with the other. So we do need to fulfill all of our roles. So even as children, we have to fulfill our role towards our children, but we also need to fulfill our roles towards our parents. It's not just give up on one and just completely focus on the other. Again, it's circumstantial. So it's really about how can you juggle all of them?
I think that mizan, the balance of the universe, the balance of the world that Allah's made, everything can be done. Allah doesn't give us an order that we can't manage. So Allah said, like I said, our duty to our parents, then we got merciful to our children and kind to them. We've got our neighbors' rights. We've got work right. The Prophet did it in the most perfect way. He fulfilled everyone's rights beyond what we can even comprehend. So there is a way to balance it and give everyone their rights. And if you ask Allah for help in doing that, Allah will help you to fulfill everyone's rights.
Ameen.
Inshallah. And that would happen, inshallah. But make that intention, make a plan, and start to. So one other area of this which is linked to parents is sibling rivalry and sibling. I'm talking about adults, with married, with children or not married, where there can be a lot of animosity between even practicing siblings, and they could be very active in the community or going to lectures and doing all the rest, but they don't even talk to their own brother and sister. And this is really sad, and it's quite common, unfortunately. And I say, when I speak to people like that are going through this, where they're not talking to their brother or sister, and they always tell me everything that they've done wrong, and they can't name a single thing they might have done to them. And the solution to that is very simple, actually. It's not what you did, what she did, what he did. It's actually just be nice to your sibling that you aren't talking to, and see the magic that happens. Yeah, see what
Sure.
happens. Just start to be nice to the sister you weren't talking to, or your brother, and forget talking about anything else. Just be nice, be human, be Muslim, be kind, and see how that bond is fixed.
Yeah,
But when
absolutely.
you keep to the past, and this happened and you did this and I did that, it's never going to end.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think again, it's about the goodness that we do, and we battle with our nafs is going to bring so much more barakah in our lives.
Yeah, and one of the key areas, when you blame yourself, you get a lot of things done in life. When you start to say, it's that consciousness thing that you said about having guilt. Like, if did I speak to that person wrongly? Did I shout at that person? Was I inappropriate here? Did I do that wrong? Did I forget to do this for my mom? If you have that all the time, not to the level of anxiety, I'm just saying you have a consciousness of it, you start to become an amazing person, because you're always aware of what you're doing wrong. Now, that doesn't mean you compromise certain things. If you've got an employee that doesn't work properly and you're the manager, you can't be merciful, unlimitless,
Of course, you have
Yeah.
your
But
rights as well.
that guilt is very important to have
Again, yeah, I agree. I think it has to be a healthy form
healthy. Yeah.
that drives you, as
Yeah.
opposed to it being
Exactly.
toxic, yeah,
Yeah.
and
So
self-destructive.
it's just the same as the level of stress you should have. So
Absolutely.
optimal stress is healthy. Too much stress is a killer. Not enough stress is not a motivator. It's the same thing. So
Yeah.
I think guilt is on that level of finding the balance of feeling enough guilt to act, but
Yes.
not enough that overwhelms you, or, like you said, drives you down and you can't really achieve anything or get anything done. So it's all
But
about that.
yeah, and knowing yourself. So knowing, is that
Yeah.
going to be a driver, or is that going to be destructive? And using what will work. So for some,
Yeah.
guilt would be a good drive to get them to do things, and for others, it might just be too toxic for them. So
Yeah.
it's trying to find what works for you. And for them, it could just be saying positive statements,
Yeah.
reminding them of the things that they can do, and just doing it. But
Yeah.
but I'm just aware of time, Dr. Deen.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, it feels like such a short time
Yeah.
that we've spent together. But I just wanted to think very quickly about what are some of the psychological strategies that people can use to manage stress who are in
Yeah.
this situation.
So I've been through both stress sort of phases in my life. One where I couldn't handle stress, and then when I learned how to handle stress. And what's the difference between the two? When you can't handle stress, is when you're trying to do too many things at once. So it's all over the community, trying to do too many projects, overwhelming, and you've got a job and family. That you got to break down to a really good one. Of the best analogies I ever came across was a lady who swam the English Channel. So she swam from um, Dover to Calais.
Yeah.
And somebody said, "How do you swim?" I think it's 26 miles Dover to Calais, UK to France. And she's swimming and says, "How can you swim 26 miles?" And she said, "I only focus on the next stroke. That's it. I don't think about how far it is. Only one stroke at a time. Only thinking about the next stroke. That's all. And then you get to 26 miles and you cross the channel."
Yeah.
In the same way, when you're stressed, you've got to break it down, and you have to start to get a little bit organized. The number of people, even today's AI world, who don't have a diary or don't have a planner is shocking. It's shocking to me, like how you don't write things down or have a planner so there's so much technology now that can be used to reduce stress by writing things down, planning things, and breaking it down. And I think it's is it Tony Robbins or I think it's Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker. Not saying buy a $10,000 course or anything. He said one really great thing. He said people overestimate what they can achieve in a day and underestimate what they can achieve in a year. And I think that's a real stress reliever, because if you think today I didn't write that blog, I didn't, pay the bills, you're going to be so stressed. But if you think, what did you achieve in a year? It's a huge amount you can do in a year or 5 years.
It's true.
And if you break it down like that, your stress level should come down. That's from productivity point of view.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like life, how do you reduce stress? Again, if you take responsibility more, you start to feel better actually. I feel better when I take responsibility. If I blame other people for everything and all the problems and they did it wrong, then all I'm doing is stressing myself out even more because I'm worried about them now.
Yeah.
Five people I blame today, I'm worried about 5 people now. But if I blame myself, I only need to manage myself now
Yeah.
and what I can do about it. So whatever you can do about a situation, you plan. What you can't, you leave it to Allah. So you say, right, this problem's coming up in 3 weeks' time. Like let's say it's a bill. What can I do about it? What can I not do about it? And then write it down. So I'm going to pay in installments. I don't have enough money. I can't worry about that. Right. So you've got to write down what you can do and what you can't do. That's stressing you out. Writing it down or journaling is great. I don't journal, but people do swear by it. But I think writing it down is really, really helpful.
And I think what you said is key. It's about being practical and putting that into your life, whether that's getting diaries, using your phone, scheduling, managing time is so important so that you're on top of it, breaking down goals into short-term goals, into long-term goals. So there's a lot of resources out there for those who would like to find out more about that. And I think you've just got to be compassionate to yourself as well. So being realistic about what you can do rather than being unrealistic about what you can't do. So like you said, juggling so many different things. And that's gonna
So you're right. So it depends on the personality and the background and the childhood. Some people need to be compassionate with themselves. Others need to push themselves. So I'm a guy, I need to push myself. I'm always like, you idiot, you didn't do enough. But then there's others that need compassion because they need it. So there's no one size fits all. We're all human, we're all different. So you're absolutely right. So it's not one size fits all. But what can be done though is Surah Allah swears by time. Time is so important to every human being. There's no excuse to think that, I'm just going to procrastinate. And if you are a procrastinator, then watch YouTube videos, find ways to get out of that procrastination. The other is to think about the urgency of life. So the urgency of achieving even the small goals. I always say if you want to achieve something great in your life, a lot of people say, I don't know what I want to do. And it's actually, you don't need to know what you want to do. You just need to know you want to do something great and Allah will put it in front of you. So let's say you want to help the community and you don't know what to do about it. It will come. You might go to the masjid and someone proposes a project. You might see a scenario where Allah puts in front of you where there's something needed in the world or it pops up on the website and Allah will give you inspiration. All you need to do is want to do something great, whether it's serving your parents or helping the community, or raising your children. You want to do something great, Allah will make it happen.
It's having that trust, isn't it? The welcome. Absolutely. The other thing I wanted to mention was communicating. So sometimes we have this idea of I can do it all. I can look after them. I don't need any help. And the importance is actually you do need to communicate with others and delegate work as well. And self-care. So sometimes we get into this position where we get burnt out, we get stressed. And I think it is important that we look after ourselves so that we can be able to look after our parents, our children, our spouses, our friends, whoever we have in our life.
Yes, I'll give you a really good practical tip on what I learned as a trainer. So I was a trainer for DWP, training social workers on communication. And this was a phenomenal project. So they spent a few £1 million. And us trainers were driving up and down the country to different social work environments. Some of the social workers came to like hotels. Some we went to social service offices. And for those that were in deprived areas, people on low income, low attainment levels, there's a big issue of lack of communication, a lot of internal fighting, domestic abuse, all of that. And the government wanted a well-intentioned project. How can we help communication? Because communication leads to good outcomes for children. And it's really interesting. What we were training social workers on was just how you say the same thing. So we had these cards, we would do activities with them, and then they would use that with the parents. And what it was things like, you're never home on time. What's wrong with you? Yeah, and it's like, I really enjoyed being with you. It'd be nice if you could come home early today and we could go out for a walk. So it's exactly the same thing you're saying in two different ways. It's
Absolutely.
exactly the same thing. And
Yeah.
the same with us when we communicate with each other. And we all make mistakes in that, don't we? With our spouses, with family, with kids. And it's just, it would be nice. I would like to, if we could do something, it'd be good to go to the party. Why don't we cook together today? It'd be nice, right?
Yeah.
You haven't made dinner today. I'm hungry. Like, no, like, you know, it literally is like that. So just the sentences itself, words are so powerful, can break or make a home.
Yeah.
Just the sentences. Forget
It's so
everything else.
powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I was pushed and pulled when you were saying that. So
Yeah. We ran this for 9 months and it was really transformational. It just you think that you need millions of pounds and you're going to have to run a new institution. It's just how you speak, how you communicate,
it's all
manners,
inside.
other than manners, which
Comes back to that.
Yeah,
I agree.
And that goes to using that with parents as well.
Yeah,
You know,
how and even with couples, like you said, it's in many communication language. How we speak is so key, and it's adab as well. It's good manners. That's so important.
Exactly, absolutely.
So, Dr. Deen, we're coming to the end, and I just wondered if there's anything you'd like to share as last thoughts
on the topic of parents.
Anything?
I think we need to be more visionary as a community. So we're still very stuck in career, house, one holiday a year, car, and we're very limited to what our goals are.
Yes.
And some communities are very visionary, so they look at the much bigger picture of how everyone is doing. And you know, there's in the books of the Salaf about one of the Sahabi who said, for breaking the itikaf, he said, I heard from the Prophet you get 10 years reward for breaking. So he left the masjid to help a brother who had a loan. Okay. So he left the masjid to help him. He didn't pay off his debt. He just went to help him communicate about some debt. And everyone's shocked. Why would you leave the masjid and leave itikaf? And the reward for helping another brother is 10 years of itikaf. So we forget. In our community, one thing we've really forgotten is to help others. Let me give you an example. A lot of unmarried sisters, a lot of unmarried brothers. How many people go out the way to matchmake? They're sitting around and people know people that are available. How many people are bothered to matchmake? You know, you get a ticket to Jannah if you did that for someone. But we're not very focused on helping others in that way. Yes, we donate to charities. It was relatively easy to do. But helping each other, we're really lacking in that, you know. And I find that a lot, that, you know, somebody has an issue financially, somebody needs someone to talk to, someone needs to get married and can't find anyone. We really need to be more proactive like other communities.
I think it's taking time out, which is what people don't do so much because they're so stuck.
But it's what you said, sister, about if you're merciful on those on the earth, the one above is merciful on you. And wallahi, I see that the more you help Allah's creation, Allah is opening impossible things that you couldn't imagine happen for you. Like, how did that happen? You know, and your fist is in the air. Ya Allah, thank you for doing that. It's only because you help somebody else, Muslim or non-Muslim. You help humans, and Allah will help you.
Yeah, and I think it's that idea of time as well. Sometimes we say we don't have enough time, but when you pray and when you make that time, Allah puts barakah in your time.
Time is about management. So I've got, for example, I get up at 4 a.m. and I start work, and I literally start work on the laptop. Then I work till I pray, and then I have like a 45-minute nap before I start the 9 a.m. job. And then I'm working, and I finish at like 9 or 10 a.m. Sometimes I get early night. But that's every day, 7 days a week for the last 17 years. Yeah. So there is
a productive Muslim.
I don't know, but
mashallah.
You know what it is? You know what it is? It's a sense of urgency that we're going to die and we don't have much time on this earth. And if I can't sleep because I've got something that I need to get done. So how can I sleep? Now, I balance it with exercise as well and a very healthy diet, pure food, no processed foods as much as I can. And so really, I'm not saying everyone should do that, but it's actually the sunnah. The Prophet would wake up at Tahajjud and he wouldn't go back to sleep. and he'd have a nap after Fajr. That's actually Sunnah, and scientifically, the way our bodies work, so circadian rhythm, our sleep patterns, actually you're meant to be awake at night, in the middle of the night. And I notice whenever I'm awake in the middle of the night, and then I go back to sleep for about half an hour, those days I'm never tired. I'm not tired in the day. And when you oversleep, you're very sluggish and tired.
Yeah.
So there's something in nature, even the rays of the sun when we wake up and the sun goes down, that we ignore. We're not in touch with nature anymore.
And I think life is meant to be about, you have to have a bit of struggle in order to
Yes.
gain. And I think that's what we don't do enough of. So, no,
Sorry.
but I love the example that you
Yeah.
shared, Dr. Deen, because I think many of us can benefit from that, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair.
But I'm just aware of time, and I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Deen, for your time and for all the knowledge that you shared. May everyone benefit. I just wanted to end with a reminder that we're not alone in this journey. Balancing the needs of your elder parents, your children, your work, life demands is a challenge, but with the right mindset and reliance on Allah, it's one we can manage one step at a time. And managing guilt of not living with elderly parents who needs care is difficult, but remember that being a loving, responsible child comes in many forms. Your intention, efforts to stay connected, and the steps you take to support them matter more than living under the same roof. Embrace your limitations with compassion. Find peace in knowing that you are balancing your duties as best as you can. Jazakallah khair for listening, and thank you so much, Dr. Deen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Speak soon. Take care.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.